Sign it. The car, the condo, and $1 million on this card are all yours. After this, we owe each other nothing." Isabel's voice was as cold as she was like ice. I looked up at the woman in front of me. A perfectly tailored pantsuit traced the lines of a killer figure. Her makeup was flawless, her features immaculate, but there wasn't a flicker of warmth in her eyes. She looked at me like I was a piece of furniture she was getting rid of. This was my wife, in name only, Isabel Vance, CEO of Vance Industries. And I was Ethan Hayes, the joke of the city, her useless husband who'd married into the family. 3 days ago, I was a hedge fund manager in another world. A freak accident, and I woke up in the body of this guy who happened to share my name. For the last 3 days, I've been watching the world's longest, worst movie, absorbing over 20 years of this guy's pathetic, suffocating memories. A year ago, Isabel's grandfather was on his deathbed. For reasons no one understood, he'd forced her to marry the original Ethan, who at the time was just an ordinary college student. After the wedding, Ethan moved into the Vance estate, a kept man with no skills and no ambition, living off her family and enduring endless ridicule. Isabel had never given him the time of day. Now the old man was dead. Isabel was in charge, and her first order of business was to erase this stain from her life. She looked down at me, her disdain barely concealed, a flicker of impatience in her eyes. She probably expected me to grovel, to cling to her leg and beg her not to leave me, just like the original Ethan would have. After all, to a loser like him, $1 million was an impossible fortune. The air in the room was so still I could hear myself breathe. The Vance family's butler and a few maids stood a short distance away, their eyes glinting with the smug pleasure of watching a train wreck. I ignored the divorce papers and picked up the cup of coffee on the table, taking a sip. It was cold. Only $1 million? I set the cup down. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence. Isabel's brow furrowed. She thought I was trying to negotiate. "Ethan, don't push your luck. You've lived off our family for a year rent-free. $1 million is more than generous." I smiled. Not a smirk, not a sneer, just a genuine, amused smile. "Ms. Vance, I think you've misunderstood." I used 2 fingers to gently push the papers back toward her. "What I mean is, it's not enough." Her face darkened instantly. "How much do you want?" "I don't want your money." I stood up and walked over to her. She was a few inches shorter than me. I could smell the cold, woody scent of her perfume, elegant but distant. I picked up the expensive fountain pen she'd left on the table and, with 2 sharp strokes, signed my name at the bottom of the agreement. The signature was a confident, powerful flourish she'd never seen before. "The divorce is fine. Your money, your car, your condo, I don't want a dime." I capped the pen and tossed it onto the table. It landed with a sharp click. I'm walking away with nothing. With that, I turned and left without a single backward glance. Everyone in the living room was frozen in shock. Isabel stared at my retreating back, and for the first time, a crack appeared in her icy composure. Disbelief. This was the one outcome she hadn't planned for. She had strategies for dealing with begging, with tears, with blackmail, but she had no idea what to do with a clean break. She didn't know that the loser standing before her had the mind of a financial strategist from 20 years in the future. A mere $1 million? Sorry, but I wasn't interested. Leaving the gilded cage of the Vance estate, even the air felt cleaner. It was 2024, an era of explosive opportunity. With what I knew, $1 million was chump change. $100 million was just a warm-up. But for now, I was broke. Even a titan of industry can be tripped up by a lack of pocket change. I checked my pockets. An old smartphone and about $50. I needed seed money. I remembered the only valuable thing the original Ethan owned, an antique pocket watch his grandfather-in-law had given him. He'd carried it everywhere, like a good luck charm. I took an Uber to the city's largest antiques district. The watch was in pristine condition, with exquisite engraving. It was clearly a high-end piece. I walked into the most impressive-looking shop I could find. The owner was a middle-aged man in gold-rimmed glasses. He glanced at my generic clothes with a hint of disdain, but asked professionally, "Can I help you, sir?" I placed the watch directly on the counter. The owner's eyes widened. He carefully picked it up, pulled on a pair of white gloves, took out a loupe, and examined it from every angle. A beautiful piece, truly beautiful. The more he looked, the more excited he became. "Son, are you looking to sell this. Make me an offer, I said. He rubbed his hands together and held up 5 fingers. How about this much? 50,000. His face twitched, then he forced a laugh. You've got a sense of humor, kid. I meant 5,000. I picked up the watch and turned to leave. Hey, wait, son, don't be hasty. The owner hurried to block my path. We can negotiate. 10,000. How about 10,000? That's the top market price. I looked at him like he was a clown. First, this is a Patek Philippe, custom-made for a railroad tycoon in the early 20th century. Second, the inscription, to a master of time, was a personal gift. Third, you know damn well where a piece like this comes from. Every word landed like a hammer blow. Sweat started beading on his forehead. I don't have time to play games. 300,000. Not a penny less, or I walk. The owner's expression shifted from feigned indignation to grudging respect. Finally, he gritted his teeth. You're an expert, kid. 300,000. That's a lot of cash flow for a small shop like mine. Tell you what, 280. Let's call it a friendly deal. Done. I couldn't be bothered to haggle further. 280,000 was more than enough. Half an hour later, the money was in my bank account. Stepping out of the shop into the bright sunlight, I took a deep breath. The whole world was at my feet. Isabel and everyone else who looked down on me. Just you wait. Soon enough, you'll understand what a colossal mistake you made. The first thing I did with the money was open a brokerage account. Now it was time for the magic to happen. I remembered every major stock surge and market trend of the next few years. I picked a tech stock that looked completely unremarkable, even on a steady decline, Helios Innovations. The consensus on Wall Street was that it was headed for delisting. Only I knew that in 3 days, the company would announce a revolutionary new chip technology, and its stock would skyrocket, multiplying 30 times over in half a month. I put all 280,000 into it. With that done, I found a cheap motel nearby. All I had to do was wait. Meanwhile, in the CEO's office at Vance Industries, Isabel stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city below. Her assistant, Megan, was giving her a report. Ms. Vance, Sterling Corp has blocked our raw material shipments again. 3 projects have been forced to halt. If this continues, the board is going to... Isabel's expression remained unchanged, but her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. The Sterlings, a family her own father had helped build up, only for them to turn on the Vances during their most difficult time, gobbling up their assets and working relentlessly to drive them into the ground. The stress had sent her father into a decline, and he had left the company in her hands before he passed. For the past year, she had been holding it all together on her own. The old guard on the board was circling like vultures, and the Sterlings were closing in. She was exhausted. It was why she'd been so eager to divorce Ethan. She didn't want to drag an innocent person into this war. In her view, his weakness was a form of protection. Away from her, away from the Vances, he could at least live a safe, simple life. How is he? Isabel asked suddenly, her voice barely a whisper. Megan paused, realizing who he was. Mr. Hayes hasn't contacted us since he left. We tracked him to the antiques district, and then nothing. He hasn't touched the money in the account. Isabel fell silent, walking away with nothing. Those words were like a thorn in her side. She expected him to cry, to make a scene, to embody the spineless leech she'd always believed him to be. But he hadn't. He had left with a calm resolve that unnerved her. Ms. Vance, Megan asked cautiously, should we continue to keep an eye on him? He's just an ordinary man. There's nothing to see. Isabel turned, her Ice Queen persona firmly back in place. Give me the files for this afternoon's meeting. Yes, Ms. Vance. Megan left, and Isabel was alone again. She walked to her desk and pulled open a drawer. Inside lay the signed divorce papers. Ethan's bold, confident signature seemed to mock her. She never imagined that the man she had despised for so long would deliver the most resounding slap to her face simply by walking away. 3 days passed in a blur. I spent the time holed up in the motel, either watching the market or studying the business landscape of this era. Just as I predicted, after 3 days of hitting rock bottom, Helios Innovations released blockbuster news right before the opening bell. The Prometheus chip has been successfully developed, with performance exceeding the international standard by 3 generations. The market erupted. The moment the bell rang, Helios shot up from its lowest point to its maximum daily limit, propelled by a tidal wave of buy orders. The value of the orders holding it at the limit was over $1 billion. I watched the bright red numbers on my screen and smiled. Game on. For the next 2 weeks, Helios Innovations was the star of the stock market. 15 consecutive days of hitting the trading ceiling. The share price soared from the $3 where I'd bought it to over 90. My account balance swelled from $280,000 to nearly $9 million. On the 16th day, the moment the stock wavered, I sold everything without hesitation. The second the funds hit my account, I had officially secured my first round of major capital. I didn't leave the cheap motel. On my new laptop, I started planning my next move. My goal was never just to make a quick buck on the stock market. I was going to build an empire. My first target was a gaming company on the verge of bankruptcy, Dreamweaver Studios. The company had been a big deal a few years ago with a massively popular online game, but a series of bad decisions led to its decline. Now it was drowning in debt and looking for a buyer. Everyone saw it as a sinking ship. Only I knew that its core team was still intact, and they were sitting on the prototype of a revolutionary VR engine. The project was shelved only because they had run out of money. In my original timeline, this company was bought by a tech giant. With that VR engine, they launched the age of virtual reality, and their market cap eventually surpassed $1 trillion. This time, that opportunity was mine. I contacted the founder of Dreamweaver, a middle-aged guy named Barry Kowalski, who everyone called Bear. We met at a coffee shop. Bear looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and messy hair. The company's debt was clearly taking its toll. "Mr. Hayes," he said, taking a huge gulp of black coffee, "are you seriously interested in buying our company?" His eyes were full of doubt. I looked too young to be a serious player. "Not buying," I said, shaking my head. "Investing." "Investing?" Bear was even more confused. "I'll put in $20 million for a 70% stake in the company. You and your team stay on and keep building what you want to build." I looked him straight in the eye. "I have only one condition. That VR engine project, the one you call Morpheus. I want it restarted. Immediately." Bear's hand trembled, spilling coffee on the table. He stared at me as if he'd seen a ghost. How did you know about Morpheus?" The Morpheus project was the company's biggest secret, known to fewer than 5 people. Who the hell was this kid? "I not only know about Morpheus, I also know that your problem isn't technology, it's cash." I leaned forward slightly, my presence filling the space between us. "Is $20 million enough to make your dream a reality?" Bear's breathing grew ragged. A fire reignited in his eyes. It was the light of a dream given a second chance. "Enough. More than enough." His voice shook with emotion. "Mr. Hayes, if you're really willing to invest, my life is yours." "I don't want your life. I wanted technology." The deal was struck quickly. Bear was a pure tech guy. For him, the chance to continue his work was everything. We signed a preliminary agreement right there. Walking out of the coffee shop, the future felt limitless. I had no idea that in another corner of the cafe, a woman in sunglasses had watched the entire meeting. She took out her phone and dialed a number. "Ms. Vance, it's me. I found Mr. Hayes. He's meeting with Barry Kowalski from Dreamweaver Studios. It looks like they're talking about an acquisition." On the other end of the line, there was a long, heavy silence. The atmosphere in Isabel's office was tense. Acquiring Dreamweaver, Isabel's voice was laced with disbelief. That company was a bottomless pit. Even the Sterlings had tried to get involved and ended up losing a fortune before pulling out. "Ethan, where did he get that kind of money? What was he planning?" "Yes, Ms. Vance." And from the look on Kowalski's face, he seemed extremely respectful of Mr. Hayes. Her assistant, Megan, reported equally baffled. After hanging up, Isabel couldn't stay calm. She pulled up Ethan's file. Born to a middle-class family, mediocre grades, no special talents. His resume was a blank slate. How could a person like that come up with millions of dollars to buy a company in just 2 weeks, unless a ridiculous thought sparked in her mind? What if he had been pretending all along? Once the idea took root, it refused to go away. She remembered the day of the divorce, his calm eyes, his confident signature, his resolute departure. That wasn't the behavior of a weakling. That was the quiet confidence of a master, finally unshackling himself. She felt an invisible hand clench around her heart. If he was faking it, why? What was his endgame? The Vance family's money? But he walked away with nothing. Their influence? He never once used their name. A thick fog of mystery now surrounded Ethan Hayes. For the first time, Isabel realized she didn't know the man she'd shared a roof with for a year at all. Investigate him. Isabel snapped into the intercom, her voice leaving no room for argument. I want to know everything Ethan has done in the last 2 weeks. His funding sources, who he's met, what he's been up to. I want a complete report. She had a powerful feeling. A storm far bigger than she could have ever imagined was brewing. And at its center was the man she had pushed away. The acquisition of Dreamweaver moved quickly. The $20 million injection brought the dying company roaring back to life. Bear and his team, energized and motivated, worked day and night on the Morpheus engine. And I became the company's new chairman. I didn't interfere with their technical development. I let the experts do their jobs. My role was to clear all obstacles from their path. First, money. 20 million sounds like a lot, but for a cash-burning field like VR, it was a drop in the bucket. I needed more. I turned my attention to the international futures market. Using my knowledge of the future, I executed a series of lightning-fast trades on crude oil, gold, and soybeans, capitalizing on major price swings. I was like a surgeon, precisely and repeatedly extracting profits. My personal wealth began to snowball. 9 million, 15 million, 30 million, 50 million. In just 1 month, my capital broke the $100 million mark. I had become my own bank. One day, I was in my office reviewing the latest progress report from Bear when my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Hello, Ethan, it's your mother. The voice on the other end was sharp and condescending. It was my dear mother-in-law, Eleanor Vance. In my memory, she was second only to Isabel in her contempt for the original Ethan. Snide remarks and cutting insults were her specialty. Is there something I can help you with? My tone was flat. Something you can help me with? You ungrateful snake. You think you could just fly the coop? Did you forget who let you through the Vance family doors in the first place? Eleanor's voice shot up an octave. So what is it? I was getting impatient. It's your sister Sophie's birthday party tonight at the Grand Astoria. You will be there, she said, her tone an order, not an invitation. Sophie Vance, Isabel's cousin, a spoiled, arrogant princess who had taken great pleasure in mocking the original Ethan. Her birthday party? I had zero interest. I'm Busse. Don't you dare. Eleanor shrieked. Let me spell it out for you, Ethan. Kyle Sterling will be there tonight. You will come. You will apologize to Isabel in front of him. Tell her you regret everything. And maybe she'll take pity on you and let you come back. Otherwise, a loser like you will be starving on the street before you know it. Now I understood. They wanted me to be the court jester, a pathetic fool to contrast with a magnificent Kyle Sterling and to humiliate me in the process. How amusing. I'll be there, I said, and hung up. Why not go? I was curious to see what kind of game they were playing. And the Sterlings. That name made my eyes narrow. According to my research, Vance Industries' biggest rival was Sterling Corp. And the heir, Kyle Sterling, was an arrogant playboy who had been relentlessly pursuing Isabel. It sounded like tonight was going to be an interesting evening. 7 o'clock, the Grand Astoria Hotel. I walked into the glittering ballroom dressed in casual clothes. My arrival immediately drew stares. Surprise, contempt, mockery, a web of glares fixed on me. What is he doing here? Didn't he and Isabel get a divorce? Look at what he's wearing. Is that from a discount store? So embarrassing for the family. The nerve of him, showing his face after being kicked out. The whispers were just loud enough for me to hear. I paid them no mind, walked straight to the buffet, and started piling food onto a plate. The lobster at a 5-star hotel, I had to admit, was pretty damn good. Just then, a girl in a pink princess dress and heavy makeup sashayed toward me, entourage in tow. The birthday girl herself, Sophie Vance. Well, if it isn't my pathetic ex-brother-in-law, Sophie said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Did you come here to beg for scraps? The rich kids with her burst out laughing. Sophie, be nice. He's got experience living off others, after all. Yeah, maybe he's looking for his next meal ticket. I ignored them, focusing on the abalone on my plate. My silence seemed to infuriate Sophie further. She snatched the plate from my hand and smashed it on the floor. Are you deaf? I'm talking to you. The sharp crack echoed through the ballroom, silencing all conversation. Everyone turned to look. My expression finally hardened. I slowly wiped my mouth with a napkin, stood up, and looked at Sophie. Pick it up. My voice was quiet, but it carried an undeniable authority. Sophie was stunned. She'd never seen this side of Ethan. The old Ethan wouldn't even dare to make eye contact with her. What did you say? Are you giving me an order? She looked at me as if I'd told the world's most ridiculous joke. I'll say it again. Pick it up. My eyes turned sharp and cold. Pinned by my gaze, Sophie felt a flicker of fear and took an involuntary step back. What? What are you going to do? Security. Security, she stammered. Just then a smooth, masculine voice cut in. Sophie, what's going on? A handsome man in a white suit, his eyes holding a hint of malice, walked over. Trailing behind him were my former mother-in-law, Eleanor, and a stone-faced Isabel. It was Kyle Sterling. Eleanor saw the mess on the floor and immediately pointed a finger at my face. You worthless piece of trash, Ethan. How dare you cause a scene here? Who invited you? Get out now. Kyle, however, just looked at me with an amused smirk. He turned to Isabel. Izzy, darling, is this your ex-husband? He looks even more pathetic in person. His words oozed superiority. Isabel didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed on me. She'd been watching me since the moment I walked in. My calm, my indifference, my sudden aggression. It was all so alien to her. Was this really the same Ethan Hayes she knew? She'd come tonight specifically because she'd found out about my acquisition of Dreamweaver. She wanted to confront me, to demand an explanation. But the scene unfolding before her made the words die in her throat. Mother, Sophie, that's enough, Isabel finally said, her voice cool. But Isabel, he bullied me. Sophie whined. Apologize, I said, looking at Sophie again. Why should I? Because you wasted food and disturbed everyone else's evening, I said, gesturing around the room, including your own birthday party. Kyle Sterling laughed. He walked up to me and clapped a hand on my shoulder in a condescending gesture. Hey, buddy, let's call it a night. It's Sophie's birthday. Just let it go. You should probably leave. This place isn't for you. I stared at the hand on my shoulder, my face impassive. Get your filthy hand off me. Kyle's smile froze. What did you just say? I said. I enunciated each word clearly. Get your hand off my clothes. The temperature in the room plummeted. Do you have any idea who I am? How dare you speak to me like that? Kyle's face was a thundercloud. The surrounding guests gasped. Was this Ethan guy insane? He was openly provoking the heir to Sterling Corp. Eleanor was shaking with rage. You've lost your mind. Ethan, who the hell do you think you are, talking to Mr. Sterling like that? Apologize this instant. I ignored Eleanor's shrieking and kept my cold gaze locked on Kyle. Kyle's anger turned into a sneer. Fine. Just fine. Isabel, you certainly know how to pick them. A rabid dog with a death wish. He looked at Isabel, expecting to see disgust on her face. But Isabel was just frowning, her expression a complex mixture of confusion and something else. She didn't understand what had happened to Ethan. The man she knew would have cowered before Sophie, let alone Kyle. Today, he was like a drawn sword, sharp and dangerous, yet completely unreadable. What had happened to him in the last 2 weeks? Just then, I moved. I didn't throw a punch. That would be crude. I simply reached up and, with 2 fingers, pinched the wrist of the hand on my shoulder. Then I squeezed. Arg! Kyle let out a pain scream. His face turned beet red, veins popping on his forehead. It felt like his wrist was caught in a vice about to shatter. Let go, he choked out. I released him. Kyle staggered back, clutching his wrist, his eyes wide with terror. He couldn't fathom how this skinny guy had such incredible strength. The entire ballroom was silent. Everyone was stunned. You're a lunatic, a complete madman. Eleanor shrieked. I brushed off my shoulder where Kyle had touched it, as if wiping away something disgusting. Now, can we get back to the matter of the plate? I said, turning my attention back to Sophie. Sophie was pale with fear, hiding behind Kyle. Ethan, Isabel could no longer remain silent. She strode toward me, positioning herself between me and Kyle. What do you think you're doing? I'm not doing anything, I said, looking at her. I was trying to eat a quiet meal, and someone interrupted me. Ms. Vance, your family started this. My form of address, from Isabel to Ms. Vance was a deliberate twist to the knife. It stung her. We were already strangers. Enough. Isabel took a deep breath, suppressing her own turmoil. Today is my cousin's birthday. For my sake, let this go. You should leave. There was again that condescending, commanding tone. Leave. I smiled. Why should I? I came for a birthday party, and I'm not finished eating. And with that, I actually turned around, walked back to the buffet, picked up a clean plate, and continued as if nothing had happened. The sheer contempt of that act was more infuriating to Kyle than a physical blow. Ethan, Kyle roared, his face contorted with rage. You just wait. I'm not done with you. Without turning my head, I speared a piece of salmon and put it in my mouth. Delicious. The party, thanks to me, ended on a sour note. Kyle left early, his face a mask of venomous hatred. Eleanor and Sophie were too furious to enjoy themselves. In the end, only Isabel and I were left in a vast ballroom. She stood a short distance away, watching me. She waited until I had finished my last bite of dessert and wiped my mouth with a napkin. Are you full? She walked over, her voice unreadable. Yep, full. Who are you? She finally asked, the question that had been haunting her for days. I looked at her. Her eyes were filled with suspicion, confusion, and a hint of something else I couldn't quite place. I met on Hayes. No, you're not, she said flatly. The Ethan Hayes I knew was nothing like you. Oh, and what was the Ethan Hayes you knew like? I asked, a hint of amusement in my voice. He was weak, incompetent, a coward. The words sounded harsh even to her own ears as she said them. And what do you think I am now? You're... Isabel was at a loss for words. She had no idea how to describe me. People change, Ms. Vance, I said, standing up to meet her gaze. What you think you know isn't always the truth. You thought I'd be starving on the street without the Vances, but I'm doing just fine. The Dreamweaver acquisition. That was you, she asked directly. It was. I didn't deny it. Where did you get the money? I don't see how that's any of your business, Miss. Vance, I said with a slight smile. We're divorced, remember? We haven't filed the papers with the court, she retorted, almost reflexively. Oh, right. Well, we will soon, I said with a careless shrug. If you only came here tonight to ask me these questions, then I'm afraid I have nothing more to say. I turned to leave. Wait, Isabel called out. The Sterlings are not people you can afford to cross. You made an enemy of Kyle tonight. He won't let this go. There was a surprising note of concern in her voice. That caught me off guard. So, he will come after you, with everything he has. Good, I said, turning back to flash her a brilliant smile, because I was just about to go after them. Isabel was completely floored. She watched me walk away, feeling as if she were trapped in a bizarre dream. The man she had once scorned, despised, and desperately wanted to get rid of had not only been reborn, but had also just declared war on her greatest enemy. On what grounds? Where did he get this confidence? Isabel's mind was a tangled mess. She realized that events were spiraling far beyond her control, and the line between her and Ethan, instead of being severed by the divorce papers, was now being woven into a complicated knot by their shared enemy. She had a feeling a much bigger storm was coming. After leaving the hotel, I didn't go back to my motel. I went straight to the Dreamweaver offices. Bear and his team were still there, working late. The office was brightly lit, buzzing with creative energy. Mr. Hayes, what are you doing here? Bear was both surprised and delighted to see me. Just checking in. How's the project coming along? Everything's on track. We implemented your suggestions and optimized the core algorithm. The Morpheus engine's rendering efficiency has increased by 30%. Give us one more month, and we'll have the first demo ready. Bear said, rubbing his hands together excitedly. Excellent. I nodded, then changed the subject. Bear, I need a favor. Anything, Mr. Hayes. I need you to dig up some dirt for me on a guy named Kyle Sterling, heir to Sterling Corp. I want all his skeletons, the darker the better. Bear paused for a second, then a grim understanding crossed his face. Consider it done, Mr. Hayes. We've got a few world-class white hat hackers on our team. You should never underestimate a tech nerd's reach. I was going to make Kyle Sterling understand exactly what happens when you mess with me. The next few days were quiet. Kyle made no moves, as if he'd forgotten all about that night. but I knew it was the calm before the storm. A vindictive personality like his would never let it go. If he wouldn't make the first move, I would. The file Bears team had compiled was waiting in my inbox. As I scrolled through the sorted photos and documents, a cold smile touched my lips. Mr. Sterling certainly had some expensive and illegal hobbies. I didn't release the information immediately. That would be too easy. I would wait for the perfect moment to deliver the killing blow. And that moment was coming soon. Vance Industries was bidding on a major downtown redevelopment project. It was a make-or-break deal for the company, their one shot at pulling out of their downward spiral. And their main competitor was, of course, Sterling Corp. Isabel had been working around the clock, pulling all-nighters for weeks. She was visibly thinner. I knew Kyle would try to sabotage her here. Sure enough, the night before the final bid presentation, the internal network of Vance Industries was hacked. Their entire proposal, all the core data and financial model for the downtown project, was stolen. The mood in Isabel's office was bleak. Had he found out who did it? Isabel's voice was hoarse, her bloodshot eyes burning with exhaustion and fury. The head of IT was sweating profusely. Ms. Vance, they were professionals. They wiped all their tracks. But the attack originated from an IP address traced back to Sterling Corp. Them again. Isabel slammed her fist on the desk. Without the proposal, they had nothing to present tomorrow. If they lost this project, the company's cash flow would dry up completely. Bankruptcy would be inevitable. Is there time to redo it? Isabel asked, clinging to a final shred of hope. No way. The IT head shook his head in despair. The core data analysis and modeling took months. It's impossible to replicate in one night. Isabel slumped in her chair, all the fight draining out of her. Was this it? Was she really going to lose? Her father's dying words echoed in her ears. She couldn't accept this. Just then, her personal cell phone rang. A blocked number. She almost ignored it, but some impulse made her answer. Hello, Ms. Vance. Can't sleep? A familiar yet strange voice said on the other end. It was Ethan. You? Isabel's voice was sharp with suspicion. How did you get this number? There are ways, I said calmly. I hear you lost your proposal. Isabel's heart stopped. How? How could you know that? This was a top corporate secret, known only to a handful of people. I not only know that you lost it, I also know Kyle Sterling was behind it. I paused for effect, and I have something you need. Isabel stopped breathing. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. A proposal that's even better than your original one. I chuckled. Now, name your price, Ms. Vance. How much is your company's future worth to you? There was a long silence on the other end. Isabel felt like she was dreaming. At her absolute lowest point, the loser she'd cast aside had somehow become her only lifeline. The feeling was absurd, yet terrifyingly real. What do you want? Isabel's voice trembled. What I want you can't afford, I said, my playful tone gone. Meet me at the coffee shop downstairs from your office in half an hour. I'll be waiting. I hung up. Isabel sat there, holding her phone, her mind in chaos. Go or not go. If she went, it was an admission of defeat, an admission that she needed him. If she didn't, Vance Industries was finished. After a long, agonizing moment, she finally stood up, grabbed her coat, and ran out of the office. She had no other choice. Half an hour later, at the coffee shop, I was sipping a latte when Isabel pushed through the door. She had changed out of her suit into a simple trench coat. Her face was pale, but her eyes were bright with a desperate intensity locked on me. Where is it? She asked, getting straight to the point. I pulled a flash drive from my pocket and set it on the table. Everything you need is on here. She reached for it, but I covered it with my hand. First, let's talk terms, Ms. Vance. Name them, she said, her expression complicated. First, I want 70% of the profits from the downtown project. Isabel's eyes widened. 70%? That was extortion. You. Don't interrupt, I said. Second, from this day forward, Dreamweaver Studios will be the exclusive VR technology provider for Vance Industries. All future projects in that space will be under our direction. And third, I looked her directly in the eye and spoke each word with deliberate weight. I want you to personally tell Kyle Sterling that you will never, ever marry him. The first two conditions were business. The last one was personal. Isabel was stunned. She never expected me to demand something like that. Why? She asked instinctively. No reason. I just don't like the guy, I said with a small smile. So, Ms. Vance, is it a deal? It seems pretty fair to me. Trade a man you never wanted to marry anyway for the future of your entire company. It wasn't a difficult choice. Isabel was silent. She looked at me, the man she once saw as worthless, now sitting across from her, dictating the terms of her fate in a way she couldn't refuse. The situation was humiliating, yet it carried with it a strange, inexplicable sense of security. Fine, she finally said, her voice hoarse. I agree to your terms. A wise choice. I removed my hand and pushed the flash drive toward her. She grabbed it, clutching it in her palm like it was the last life raft on the Titanic. Ethan, she said, looking up at me, her gaze earnest. Thank you. It was the first time she had ever thanked me sincerely. Don't thank me. It's just a transaction, I said, standing up to leave. Remember our agreement, Ms. Vance. Watching me leave, Isabel was overwhelmed by a storm of emotions. She opened her laptop and inserted the flash drive. When she saw the contents, she gasped. The proposal wasn't just complete, it was brilliant. On several key points, it introduced bold, forward-thinking strategies that had never even occurred to her. This was not the work of an ordinary person. How many more secrets was this Ethan Hayes hiding? Suddenly, she remembered my third condition. Was he standing up for her? The thought flickered through her mind, and an unfamiliar warmth crept into her cheeks. The next day's presentation was Isabel's moment of triumph. When she presented the flawless proposal, the entire judging panel was visibly impressed. Across the room, Kyle Sterling looked smug, certain that Isabel would show up with nothing. He was already planning his victory celebration. When the final decision was announced, Vance Industries had won the bid. Kyle's face turned an ugly shade of green. Impossible. That's absolutely impossible, he shouted, losing his composure. I had their proposal. He caught himself mid-sentence, but it was too late. Everyone in the room had heard him. Isabel shot him a single, cold glance, then, without a word, led her team out of the room, holding her head high. It was a stunning victory. Back at the office, Vance Industries was ecstatic. Isabel was hailed as a hero by her employees, but only she knew that the credit belonged to one man. She sat in her office, looking out at the city, and for the first time, she began to doubt her own judgment. She had always believed that pushing Ethan away was for his own protection, but now it was clear he didn't need anyone's protection. He was like a dragon, dormant in shallow waters, waiting for the right storm to ascend to the heavens. And she was the fool who had shoved that dragon away. She picked up her phone, found Ethan's number, and hesitated. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know what. She put the phone back down. Who was she to him now? An ex-wife? A business partner? Meanwhile, after his public humiliation, Kyle Sterling was livid. He knew immediately who was behind it. It had to be that bastard Ethan. Find him. Find that worthless piece of trash, Ethan Hayes. I want him dead. Kyle roared into his phone. But the news that came next wasn't about Ethan's demise. It was about his own. That afternoon, a video went viral online. It showed Kyle Sterling and a few other rich heirs in a lavish private room, engaged in a depraved party involving illegal drugs and the abuse of several women. The public outcry was immediate and immense. And then, more scandals broke. Evidence of tax evasion by Sterling Corp., contracts detailing bribes to city officials, even proof that Kyle had covered up a drunk driving accident years ago. One bombshell after another, each more shocking than the last. Sterling Corp's stock plummeted. The Sterlings were inundated with calls from partners canceling deals, banks recalling loans, and federal investigators announcing official inquiries. The Sterling empire was finished, and I was the one who had pushed the first domino. I had simply sent the files Bear gave me to a few influential journalists, anonymously. When dealing with scum like that, there's no need to play fair. The day Kyle Sterling was arrested, I was at Dreamweaver watching a demo of the finished Morpheus engine with Bear. On the screen was a breathtakingly realistic virtual world. The lighting, the physics, the textures, it was all indistinguishable from reality. We did it. Mr. Hayes, we did it. Bear was as giddy as a child. I was thrilled, too. I knew my era was about to begin. Just then, my phone rang. It was Isabel. The Sterlings. Was that your doing? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. It was. I didn't deny it. There was a long silence. Finally, she asked why. Like I said, I just don't like the guy. I paused, and he messed with the wrong people. The wrong people? Who do you mean? She asked cautiously. I didn't answer. Some things didn't need to be said. Ethan, her voice suddenly softened. Can we meet? What about? I want to give you the divorce papers back. I was taken aback. What do you mean? She took a deep breath, mustering all her courage. I regret it. Ethan, can we not get divorced? Please. Hearing her words, I felt a flicker of something. Not get divorced? The woman who had treated me like dirt was now asking to get back together. The irony was staggering. Ms. Vance, are you confused? My voice was calm again. You were the one who forced this divorce. Now you want to call it off? What do you think marriage is? One of your corporate mergers, you can cancel it, well. Her breath hitched. I know I was awful to you before. I can change. I can make it up to you, she pleaded. It was a tone I'd never heard from her. Make it up to me? I laughed. With what? Money? I have plenty. Status? I don't need it. Isabel, you think far too highly of yourself. Ethan, my words had clearly cut her deep. Do you have to be like this? Does it have to end this way between us? Between us. I shot back. What was ever between us? A year of cold shoulders, endless ridicule, and contempt? Or was it those divorce papers you threw in my face? I admit that was all my fault, but I had my reasons, she explained desperately. The Sterlings were coming after my family. I didn't want you to get caught in a crossfire. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? I laughed as if it were the funniest joke in the world. Isabel, spare me your misguided, self-righteous savior complex. You never took the time to know me. Not really. What makes you think I ever needed your protection? She was speechless. The courthouse. Tomorrow, and I know. I'll be waiting. If you're not there, I'll file the petition myself. And with that, I hung up, giving her no chance to reply. Listening to the dial tone, Isabel slid to the floor, defeated. The tears finally came. She had always seen herself as a queen in control of her own destiny. But today, she realized how wrong she had been. What she thought was protection, he saw as a joke. Everything she was proud of, he saw as worthless. She hadn't pushed away a loser. She had pushed away a titan she could now never hope to reach. Regret, deep and suffocating, washed over her. The next morning, outside the county courthouse, I arrived 10 minutes early. At 8:59, a red Porsche pulled up. Isabel got out. She wasn't wearing a power suit. Instead, she had on a simple white dress. No makeup, her eyes red and swollen. She looked fragile and heartbroken. She stood there, watching me from a distance, not moving closer. 9 o'clock sharp. I checked my watch, turned, and started walking toward the entrance. Ethan, she finally called my name. I stopped, but didn't turn around. Do you really hate me that much? Her voice was choked with tears. I don't hate you, I replied calmly. I just don't see the point anymore. We were never from the same world. Can you please give me another chance? She said, walking slowly toward me. Just one. A chance? I turned to face her. Isabel, when you threw those divorce papers at me, did you give me a chance? When your mother and your cousin humiliated me in public, did you give me a chance? No, you just stood there and watched. You probably thought I deserved it. Every word was a knife twisting her heart. No, that's not. She tried to explain, but the words felt hollow and weak. Go home, I said, looking at her one last time, my eyes empty of any emotion. From now on, you're Isabel Vance, CEO of Vance Industries, and I am Ethan Hayes, chairman of Dreamweaver Studios. We can talk business, but that's all. Without another word, I turned and walked into the courthouse. Watching the heavy doors swing shut behind me, Isabel's strength finally gave out. She sank to the ground and sobbed, her heart breaking. She knew, this time, she had truly lost him forever. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Legally, there's still a waiting period, but for me, this ridiculous marriage was officially over. Instead of going back to the office, I went to a cemetery. I found a gravestone of the original Ethan's parents. 2 ordinary, working-class people, taken too soon in a car accident. I placed a bouquet of white lilies in front of the stone and bowed deeply. You can rest easy, I whispered. From now on, I'll live for him. I'll live a life you can be proud of. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, as if in response. With that loose end tied up, I returned to the office. Bear found me immediately. Mr. Hayes, the final optimization of a Morpheus engine is complete. We're ready for a press conference whenever you are. Excellent. A jolt of energy shot through me. Start making arrangements. In 3 days, we're going to show the world what true virtual reality looks like. 3 days later, at the National Convention Center, the Dreamweaver Studios' Morpheus engine launch event was about to begin. I had invited every major tech journalist and gaming executive in the country. When I walked onto the stage and introduced myself as the chairman of Dreamweaver, a wave of whispers spread through the audience. He's so young. That's the mystery tycoon who bought Dreamweaver. He can't be more than 25. Where did he come from? I ignored the chatter and began my presentation, my voice confident and captivating. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future. I didn't bore them with technical specs. I went straight to the live demo. When a massive screen behind me lit up with a photorealistic virtual world, the entire auditorium gasped. I put on the custom VR headset, and my avatar appeared on the screen. I ran, jumped, and interacted with virtual characters. I touched a flower petal and could feel its texture. I dived into a lake and could feel the cold water. We haven't just built a game. My voice boomed through the speakers. We've built a new world. In the world of Morpheus, you can be anyone, go anywhere, and do anything you can imagine. Is this real? It's not a pre-rendered cinematic? My God, this technology is insane. The games you could build with this. Forget games. Social media, movies, education, medicine. This changes everything. The press and the industry representatives were losing their minds. It was like they were witnessing a miracle. When the presentation ended, I was mobbed. Mr. Hayes, our firm will offer you $5 billion for an exclusive license. Mr. Hayes, we'll offer $10 billion for a strategic partnership. Mr. Hayes, I smiled and politely declined all offers of acquisition. Morpheus is not for sale, but we are open to collaboration. The launch was a monumental success. Dreamweaver Studios became a legend overnight, and the name Ethan Hayes for the first time appeared on the front page of every tech and business journal, not as a joke, but as a king. Venture capitalists were lining up, desperate to get a piece of the revolution I was about to unleash. My net worth skyrocketed to an astronomical figure. I had become the hottest new name in tech. And all of this had happened in just 2 short months since I had walked out of the Vance estate. After the launch, my life became a whirlwind. Partnership proposals, investment offers, and government grants flooded in. I became a regular speaker at major business summits and tech conferences. My name was now mentioned in the same breath as the titans of industry. The very people I once would have been invisible to were now respectfully calling me Mr. Hayes. The feeling was surreal. One day, after finishing a roundtable discussion with a group of top entrepreneurs, I ran into someone unexpected at the exit. Isabel. She had also been invited. She stood off to the side, watching as I was surrounded by a crowd of admirers. Her own circle was empty. Since the fall of the Sterlings, Vance Industries had stabilized, but it was a shadow of its former self. Our eyes met. She quickly looked away. It wasn't so long ago that our positions had been completely reversed. I didn't go over to her. I got in my car. My assistant, Chris, handed me a folder. Mr. Hayes, this is another proposal from Vance Industries. They want to integrate our VR technology into their new downtown resort project. I glanced through it. It was the next phase of the project I had helped them win. They're very persistent. Ms. Vance has led a team here to meet with you several times, but you've always been unavailable. This is their 3rd formal proposal, Chris added. I stared at Isabel's signature on the cover page and was silent for a moment. Tell them if they want to partner with us, their CEO can come to my office and make her pitch in person. Yes, sir. I leaned back against the headrest and closed my eyes. I wasn't trying to be cruel. This was just business, and I now held all the cards. I wanted to see just how far the once proud Ice Queen would go to save her company. The next afternoon, Isabel arrived at my office right on time. She looked thinner than before, but composed. She was back in a sharp business suit, the powerful CEO once more. Mr. Hayes, she said with a slight nod, her tone strictly professional. Ms. Vance, please have a seat. I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. She sat down and slid a detailed proposal across the desk. This is our best offer, Mr. Hayes. I didn't even look at it. Instead, I looked at her. Ms. Vance, you must know that the line of companies waiting to partner with us stretches around the block. Why should I choose you? Her lips parted, as if to say something, but she held back. Because we have mutual interests. The success of this project would benefit us both, she said, her voice even. Really? I smiled. Because it seems to me that you need me a lot more than I need you. Without my technology, your resort is just another theme park with no competitive edge. My words were blunt and designed to sting. The color drained from her face. Her hands, resting on her lap, clenched into fists. Name your price, Mr. Hayes, she said, taking a deep breath, steeling herself for the humiliation she was sure was coming. Seeing her so defeated, I suddenly felt a pang of something. Boredom, maybe. My terms are simple. I stood up and walked to the window, my back to her. I want 30% of Vance Industries. What? She shot to her feet, her eyes wide with disbelief. 30%? Ethan, that's highway robbery. Even in its weakened state, Vance Industries was worth billions. 30% would mean handing over nearly a third of her family's legacy. You can always say no, I said, turning to face her. The door is right there. She was trembling, whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. She bit her lip so hard, I thought it might bleed. Her eyes a storm of conflict, humiliation, and despair. We stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills, the air in the room thick with tension. Finally, like a balloon deflating, all the fight went out of her. She sank back into the chair. Fine, she whispered, the word barely audible. I agree. However, she said, lifting her head to meet my gaze, I have one condition of my own. I want you to come back to me. This time, it was my turn to be stunned. What did you say? I said, I want you to come back to me, she repeated, her voice steady, her eyes burning with a desperate, all-or-nothing resolve. You can have 30% of Vance Industries and a seat on the board. And I, Isabel Vance, and my entire family will be your staunchest allies. Ethan, I know I was wrong. I'm offering you everything I have to earn your forgiveness. Isn't that enough? I looked at her, this woman of ice and steel, now willing to gamble her entire world to win me back. To be honest, I was moved, but only for a moment. Ms. Vance, I said, shaking my head with a sad smile. You still don't get it. Don't get what? You think I did all this for revenge? To crush you, to prove I was better than you. I walked toward her until I was standing over her. You're wrong. The moment I walked out of your house, you ceased to exist in my world. I want your company's stock because it's a good investment. As for you, I leaned in close, my voice a low whisper next her ear. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in second-hand goods. I straightened up and returned to my chair, as if I'd just concluded a minor piece of business. The blood drained from Isabel's face. She stared at me, her expression shifting from shock to humiliation to a final, desolate emptiness. I see. She stood up, swaying slightly, but managed to stay on her feet. She didn't say another word, didn't look at me again. She just walked out of my office with stiff, robotic steps. Her retreating figure looked broken and utterly alone. I knew, in that moment, that the last fragile thread between us had finally snapped. After Isabel left, I felt no thrill of victory, no satisfaction of revenge. Just a strange emptiness. I lit a cigarette and stared out at the sky, my thoughts a jumble. Did I really feel nothing for her anymore? Maybe, or maybe I was just using cruelty as a shield, forcing myself to sever the last ties to the past. Chris knocked and came in. Mr. Hayes, about the contract with Vance Industries. Should we proceed? Yes, I said, stubbing out the cigarette. Draw it up. 30%, not a fraction less. Understood. I expected Isabel to fight back, to hate me forever. But to my surprise, 3 days later, the stock transfer agreement was on my desk. It bore her signature. She had actually done it. The woman was tougher than I thought. Tougher on herself than on anyone. I became the second largest shareholder of Vance Industries. Our partnership had officially begun. Over the next few months, I poured my energy and resources into the downtown resort project. As a result, Isabel and I were in constant contact. Meetings, site inspections, business negotiations. We saw each other almost every day, but our interactions were strictly professional. No personal conversation whatsoever. She called me Mr. Hayes. I called her Ms. Vance. We were like two strangers who knew everything about each other, maintaining a cold, functional partnership. Everyone at both companies noticed this strange tension between us, but no one dared to comment. Only Bear, after a few too many drinks one night, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Boss, you and Ms. Vance, why do you have to make it so hard on yourselves?" I didn't answer, just drained my glass. The project was a massive success. Powered by the Morpheus engine, we created an immersive resort experience unlike anything the world had ever seen. On opening day, the crowds were enormous. It was an instant hit. Vance Industries' stock price soared, erasing all its previous losses and surpassing its all-time high. Isabel and I, as the project leads, attended the official celebration gala together. At the party, I was constantly surrounded by people wanting to offer congratulations and propose toasts. Isabel sat alone in a corner, quietly sipping a glass of wine. She was watching me, her expression a mix of pride, sadness, and something else I couldn't decipher. For some reason, I felt a surge of irritation. Making an excuse, I slipped out of the ballroom and onto a terrace for some fresh air. A few moments later, I heard the click of heels behind me. It was Isabel. She came and stood beside me, looking out at the city lights. "The project is a huge success," she said, breaking the silence. "Yes. Thank you. No need. It was a profitable venture for me, too," I replied, my tone still cool. Silence fell between us again. "Ethan," she said suddenly, "are you seeing anyone?" I was taken aback by the question. "What does that have to do with you, Miss Vance?" "Nothing," she said with a self-deprecating smile. "Just making conversation." She turned to leave. As she passed me, on some strange impulse, I reached out and grabbed her wrist. Her skin was cool to the touch. She froze, turning back to look at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You." I looked at her, at the shock and the flicker of hope in her eyes, and my own mind was a mess. Why did I do that? I had no idea. Maybe it was the champagne. Maybe it was the months of working side by side, causing the ice around my heart to finally begin to thaw. "You shouldn't drink so much," I finally said, letting go of her wrist. The word sounded stupid even to me. The light in her eyes died. "I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Hayes." She turned and walked away quickly, almost fleeing. I looked down at my hand, as if I could still feel the cool touch of her skin. I ran a hand through my hair in frustration. "Ethan, what the hell are you thinking?" After the gala, the dynamic between Isabel and me shifted again. We still only talked about work, but the absolute frostiness was gone. Sometimes in meetings, our eyes would accidentally meet, and we would both quickly look away. Sometimes at business dinners, she would discreetly step in to deflect an overly aggressive client trying to get me to drink more. She had stopped trying to win me back with grand gestures. Instead, it was a quiet, steady presence. I didn't hate it. In fact, I was getting used to it. I started to wonder if I had been too harsh. Maybe I should give her and myself another chance. Just as my resolve began to waver, disaster struck. One of the new roller coasters at the resort malfunctioned during a final safety inspection. Isabel was on the ride at the time, personally checking a loose panel. I was in the control room below with a team of engineers watching the monitors. The coaster climbed to its highest peak, then the power suddenly cut out, leaving it stranded. A moment later, an alarm blared. "Damn it! The safety harness in car 3 has failed. It could release at any moment," an engineer shouted. And Isabel was in car 3. My blood ran cold. "Emergency protocol. Get team up there now," I yelled into the radio. But it was too late. Before our horrified eyes, the safety harness over Isabel sprang open with a loud metallic clang. She was left exposed, hundreds of feet in the air, clinging desperately to the grab bar in front of her. The wind whipped around her, her body swaying precariously over the edge. In that instant, my mind went blank. I have never been so terrified in my life. Without a second thought, I shrugged off my jacket and sprinted toward the massive steel support structure of the ride. Mr. Hayes, no. It's too dangerous. Sir, you can't go up there. People tried to stop me, but I shoved them aside. I couldn't hear them, couldn't see anything but the small, fragile figure dangling in the wind. I climbed like a man possessed. The steel was slick, the wind was strong, and I nearly fell several times. But only one thought consumed me. Save her. I have to save her. I don't know how long it took, but by the time I reached her, my muscles were screaming and my lungs were burning. Isabel, I shouted. She heard my voice and slowly turned her head. Her face was as white as a sheet, but when she saw me, she smiled. It was a beautiful, heartbreaking, and serene smile. What are you doing up here? It's dangerous. She whispered, her voice barely audible. Don't talk. I carefully edged closer. Take my hand. I reached for her. She looked at my outstretched hand, then shook her head. Ethan, she said, her eyes full of love and regret. I am sorry for all the trouble I've caused you. Stop talking nonsense and grab my hand. I was frantic. If there's a next life, she was still smiling, though tears were now streaming down her face. Let me meet you sooner, okay? And with those words, her grip on the safety bar loosened. No. A primal scream tore from my throat. I lunged forward without thinking. In the terrifying moment of free fall, my fingers closed around her hand. And together, we plunged toward the ground. Below, an emergency air cushion had been inflated. We hit it hard. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs, and the world went black. My last conscious thought was, I caught you. I don't know how long I was out. When I opened my eyes, I saw a white ceiling and smelled the sharp, sterile scent of a hospital. I tried to move and felt a searing pain shoot through my body. You're awake. A familiar voice. I turned my head and saw Isabel. She was sitting by my bed in a hospital gown, peeling an apple. Her face was still pale, but she seemed to be okay. Are you all right? I asked, my voice raspy. Her hands paused. She didn't look at me. I'm fine, just shaking up a few bruises. She cut the apple into slices, stuck one on a toothpick, and held it to my lips. The doctor said you have 2 broken ribs and a mild concussion. I didn't open my mouth. I just stared at her. Why? I asked. Why what? Why did you let go? I demanded, my eyes boring into hers. She looked away, silent. Did you think dying would solve everything? That it would be some kind of penance? My voice rose with anger. Isabel, you're a goddamn coward. She flinched, and her eyes welled up with tears. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. I am a coward. I hurt you so badly, and I didn't know how to fix it. I thought, maybe if I was gone, you could forget me and start over. You idiot. I tried to sit up, but the movement sent a wave of agony through my chest. She immediately reached out to steady me. Don't move. Her touch was warm. We were so close I could see the individual tears clinging to her long eyelashes. And just like that, all my anger vanished. All that was left was a deep, aching tenderness. I raised my uninjured hand and gently wiped the tears from her cheek. She froze, looking at me with wide, unbelieving eyes. Isabel, I said, looking right at her, don't you ever do something so stupid again. Do you hear me? She just stared, speechless. Do you hear me? I repeated, my voice firm. I hear you, she finally whispered, like a chastised child. I sighed and let my head fall back onto the pillow. The room was quiet again, filled only with the soft sound of her slicing the apple. Ethan, she said after a minute. We'll talk when we're both out of here. I cut her off. Oh, she said, and fell silent. But I saw the corners of her mouth curve into a small, hopeful smile. I spent 2 weeks in a hospital. Isabel never left my side. She fed me, helped me wash, and took care of my every need with a devotion that was both humbling and heartwarming. It felt like we were newlyweds again. No, it felt better. We talked about our pasts, our favorite things. I learned that she loved old black and white movies, spicy food, and was terrified of thunderstorms. She learned that I loved rock music, played basketball in college, and hated cilantro. We were like 2 people meeting for the very first time, slowly filling in the gaps of the last year. I discovered that underneath the Ice Queen CEO, there was just an ordinary, sometimes clumsy, woman. She would fret for hours if the soup she made for me was too salty. She would beam with pride if I ate a second helping of dinner. My heart, which I had thought was frozen solid, melted completely. The day I was discharged, the sun was shining. Isabel came to pick me up. She was standing at the hospital entrance in a white sundress, her hair down. A breeze caught the hem of her dress, and she looked like a painting. She saw me and broke into a radiant smile. I walked toward her. "Let's go," I said, taking her hand. Her hand was still a little cool, but I would spend the rest of my life making sure it was always warm. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Someplace we need to be." I drove us to the county courthouse. When she saw the building, her face paled and her hand tightened in mine. "Ethan." "It's okay." I squeezed her hand, giving her a reassuring look. I led her to the same counter where we had filed our divorce petition. The clerk recognized us. "Hello again. Your waiting period is over. Are you here to pick up your final divorce decree?" I shook my head and pulled the signed divorce agreement from my pocket. Then, right in front of Isabel, I tore it into tiny pieces. "We're not getting divorced," I said, looking at the clerk and then at Isabel. We were wondering what the procedure is for getting remarried. The clerk stared, then broke into a warm smile. "Sir, your divorce was never finalized. You're still legally married. You don't need to remarry." Isabel froze. She stared at me, then at the confetti of paper on the floor, and tears began to stream down her face. But this time they were tears of joy. I reached up, gently wiped them away, and pulled her into my arms. "Hey, stop crying. You're going to ruin your makeup." She buried her face in my chest and started hitting my back, releasing all the pain and uncertainty of the past few months. "You jerk. You big jerk." I know. I'm a jerk," I laughed, letting her vent. "From now on, this jerk is all yours to manage, okay?" She didn't answer, just held on tighter. We walked out of the courthouse, hand in hand, into the sunlight. "Let's go home," she said. "Okay, let's go home." We drove back to the Vance estate. The place I had once hated, once been desperate to escape, now felt warm and welcoming. Eleanor and Sophie were there. When they saw us walk in together, holding hands, they looked like they'd seen a ghost. You too." Eleanor pointed, speechless. "Mom," I said. She flinched. "I'm still your son-in-law. I apologize for my past behavior. I hope you can forgive me." Eleanor's eyes welled up. The once overbearing, sharp-tongued woman was, in the end, just a mother who wanted her daughter to be happy. "It's good to have you back." "It's good," she murmured. Sophie walked over, her head bowed. "Welcome back, brother-in-law," she mumbled. "Thanks, Sophie," I nodded. The past was the past. It was time to move forward. That night, I was lying in the same bed I'd slept in for a year, with Isabel curled up against me like a cat. "Ethan," she whispered, tracing circles on my chest. "This feels like a dream." "It's not a dream," I said, catching her hand and kissing her fingertips. "We're never going to be apart again." "Okay," she snuggled closer. "Hey, there's something I've always wanted to ask you." "What is it?" "Who? Are you really? How do you know so much?" It was the question that had been hanging between us for months. I smiled and held her tighter. "You really want to know?" "Yes." "Okay, I'll tell you a secret." I leaned in and whispered in her ear. "I'm from the future. I traveled back in time to find you." She blinked, then burst out laughing. "I don't believe you." "Fine, don't believe me," I said, tapping her on the nose. "All you need to know is that I love you. That's enough." Her cheeks flushed, and she buried her face in my chest, content. Outside, the moonlight was soft and silver. I knew our story was just beginning. There would be more challenges, more storms to weather, but as long as we were together, we could face anything. We were finally home. Epilogue 1 year later, Dreamweaver's Morpheus platform had become the largest virtual reality community in the world. One afternoon, I was in my office when Isabel walked in, a secretive smile on her face. "Honey, I have something fun to show you." She handed me a VR headset. I put it on and found myself in an ancient, ethereal landscape of pavilions and weeping willows. A man in traditional robes, who looked exactly like me, was saying a sad farewell to a beautiful woman in white. "What is this?" "It's a little game demo I made based on your time travel story," Isabel's voice whispered in my ear. "Do you like it?" I looked at the face of the woman in white. It was Isabel's. I smiled. Just then, the virtual me spoke to the woman in white. "Isabel, wait for me." I will cross 1,000 lifetimes if I have to, but I will find you again. My smile froze. I had never said that to Isabel. That phrase. It was from the deepest, most buried part of the original Ethan's memory. I ripped off the headset and stared at Isabel. She was smiling, a sly, knowing smile I had never seen before. "Honey," she said, her voice soft and impossibly familiar. "You didn't really think you were the only one who came back, did you?" End.